What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Trill Bro Dude, and we are officially 1 week away from Slop Fest 2023, the NBA trade deadline. So if you have not already, follow our YouTube channel so you can watch me and Sam. Sam took off work so we can stream all fucking day.
Woo!
We're going to be going ham on Slop Fest.
I'm just a social worker. They're fine.
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. This is what's more important, that or a day when we might see Gary Trent Jr. be the #1 name moved.
Who knows? You can't miss a Furkan Korkmaz salary though. like your boss will understand.
Yeah. Look, you think I'm missing that shit for the world? No, absolutely not. I will be there, and I will be square.
That's right. We are not missing this for anything, folks.
Us, me, Trill, Underdog Fantasy partnering.
That's right.
Possibly the 44th president of the United States. I gotta keep stressing that. I feel like you kind of bury that every time, Trill, but there's there is a chance that the 44th president of the United States will show up.
It's true. Yep. So we're holding out for that. We're going to see. We still haven't gotten confirmation. So total real chance that the 44th president of the United States could be there. And once again, yes, we are presented by Underdog Fantasy, the newest and best place to play fantasy sports and win big prizes. If you have not already, sign up with our promo code SLOP. The SLOP season contest ends today. So if you have not gotten it in, too bad you don't have a chance to win $500 on Underdog, but you can get a $100 deposit bonus using our promo code SLOP or the link in the description. So go check that out if you have not already. We're definitely going to be doing some stuff with that leading up to the Super Bowl as well. The birds are in the bowl, so you could do fantasy drafts with your friends on there. You could do their pick 'em for stats for your favorite players or least favorite players in the Super Bowl. So definitely check that out if you have not already. And then, of course, it's always offering NBA stats every single night as well. So, Sam, we have some. We're trying to drag the slop out as much as we possibly can. There's been little drips of slop throughout the week. There hasn't really been anything. No juicy slop. Nothing. No like trades are getting close or whatever. But we do have some Sixers related slop, and that is the fact that Matisse Thybulle, who has been a controversial figure on the You Know Ball podcast, to say the least.
Yes.
Is basically available for trade. It's not to say that the Sixers will trade him. It's that Jason Dumas reported he's available for trade. Keith Pompey reported that there are teams interested, and the Sixers are fielding calls on him. So the Kings and the Warriors are the two teams that are interested in Matisse Thybulle right now. I personally, as a Matisse critic in the past, as someone who has not believed in him necessarily, I'm kind of to the point where I don't really see a trade that could be made for Matisse that makes the Sixers better right now, because his value is about as low as it could possibly be. He's a spot rotation player for the Sixers right now, playing 10 to 15 minutes a game. He's been inconsistent, but better recently. And his defense is still impactful for the team when he does get a chance to play. The offense hasn't really grown all that much, although he is hitting 40% of his open threes this year, which is definitely an improvement. But do you think that there's any realistic chance that Thybulle gets moved in the next week?
Maybe. I mean, like you said, I mean, he's a pretty important part of their rotation right now, And like the other thing is, like, he's a pretty important part of their rotation at the 3 specifically, which is one of the hardest. It seems like it's like one of the hardest positions to get in the NBA is like the 2-3 wing. Like there's like it feels like there are approximately 1 billion fours. Like, like if you're like a power forward is like the least valuable position in the NBA. I think small forward is like the most like valuable, and that is. And that sounds crazy because it's like what is the two others you're just talking about front court spots that are essentially not center, but they really are very different because like you need someone who can play in the front court, be a spacing person without like occupying while offering floor spacing, while taking up, weak side space, so it is like you have to know how to cut, you have to know all this stuff. Long story short, like Matisse Thybulle, while he's not a great offensive player, he can, if you sell out, he's turned himself into what I would call not Isaac Okoro levels of like corner shooting. So, which in on its own is like value. You know what I'm saying? Like he can be on the floor, especially like in the regular season. So like, I just don't think Matisse Thybulle, he's not valuable enough that you're going to get a replacement level 3 that you need, and he's not unvaluable enough that you can just kind of wish him away for something, like
sure.
I would keep him. The Sixers are, one of the teams that are going to need to get under the salary. They'll probably be looking to like get under the tax as like another part of their moves.
They'll probably cut their tax bill. I don't think they're going to be able to get under the tax.
Well, I don't know. Like, you get Tyrese Maxey out.
Fuck you.
Yeah, I knew it. I knew I could get you there. All right. But anyway, long story short, I don't think it'll happen.
No. I think more so to kind of your point, what you were saying, not only is it hard to find the 2-3 guys, but also every team wants them. And there's a reason why the Kings and the Warriors are the two teams interested, because they don't really have them right now. And if you look at their rotation, now the Warriors, I would say they probably need more front court help more than anything else. I think that leak personally came from Thybulle's agent side. I think Keith, basically everything he's ever reported about Thybulle seems like it does come from the agent side of things. Mark Stein with the Kings stuff, I wouldn't be surprised if that did come from the Kings or it came from someone close to the organization.
Right.
Mainly because the Kings are the one team that I feel like actually Thybulle is perfect for. Like, I feel like, okay, here's a team that doesn't really have aspirations to be championship contenders, but they are one of the top seeds in the Western Conference right now. They want to hold on to that. Thybulle's going to help you in the regular season with all the stuff that we have discussed. He can be a great bench, not a 3-point shooting wing, but in theory, a defensive specialist that can come off of the bench and can wreak some havoc, get the team out running, which they do really, really well. And kind of because the fact that they have so many offensive first guys, they can make it so that, Matisse's offense might not be as much of a concern, whereas they have major defensive issues. Now, I know the Warriors defense has struggled this year. I would put a lot of that on the fact that Draymond Green has been in and out of the lineup. Kayvon Looney hasn't been playing as much with that starting 5 unit that I would imagine they go back to in the playoffs. Wiggins has been out of the lineup, which is huge for them. They don't have a lot of point of attack defenders. And also, I think that the guys that work on the Warriors, Gary Payton II is the guy that everyone was comparing Thybulle to when these rumors came out. And the one thing I will say is that while Gary Payton II did not have any offensive juice or any sort of whatever until he played with the Warriors, I think the two things that separate him from Thybulle are, one, he can handle the ball a little bit at least. Thybulle is never going to run any sort of offense. And two, I think he's a very quick decision maker. And the read and react system that the Warriors run is going to be really because the Warriors' expectation is we're winning another title. Like they're not settling. Well, their ownership might not have that, but in general, when you have Steph Curry, that's going to be the standard that you set. When you're getting to the higher levels of the playoffs, guys like Gary Payton were working because he was setting screens, he was moving the ball, he was cutting off ball, he was doing all the things that we talk about in theory with Matisse, but Matisse has kind of done that here and there. I don't really love the fit, even though I think that the Warriors, kind of similar to the Kings and the Nuggets, can cover up a lot of guys' offensive weaknesses. I just think that if they are making a trade, I look at the Warriors roster, I look at the Kings roster, and unless a third team is getting involved, like, I don't know, Portland, who has also expressed interest in Thybulle in the past, to get like a Josh Hart type, who's the guy that I've been keep bringing up over and over, who's also a 2-3. I don't really see a way that the Sixers can improve their rotation by getting rid of Thybulle unless you bring in that third team. Because you look at the Kings roster and you go, okay, who are we going to get back? Davion Mitchell, who's another small guard, kind of in the same mold as Thybulle, a little bit better offensively, not quite as impactful defensively, a better on-ball defender than anything else. but he's also 6 foot, inconsistent shooter. Sixers don't really need that guard help. Are they going to get back Terrence Davis, Shemezi Metu, like guys that just don't really move the needle for anyone but Parm, to be honest?
Which, by the way, history will vindicate Parm.
That's true. Shemezi Metu's been good this year, but I don't think that's the thing. Is like all the guys that we want from them, Harrison Barnes, Metu, whoever. They've been too important for them. Trey Lyles, whatever. Not that we need Trey Lyles, but like,
we're gonna get to this later when we do our trade machine war crimes. But like the Kings, I have like notes on what it's like to try and like make a trade for the Kings, because like what you're saying is like a lot of their guys, like they just have like their rotation in terms of like guys that are like valuable.
Yeah,
like there's no trade. Like they have no guys who are just like kind of like on the bench. And they also have such a weird team construction where it's like you've got Sabonis, like a little peek ahead. Like I really wanted to trade Rashawn Holmes, but like it's Metu and Sabonis, who's like currently playing on a fucking broken thumb. Like so you've got to like, we'll get to that later. But that, I mean, there's a lot of teams that are kind of built like that right now, where they can't really. Their team construction is sort of a Jenga tower, and it's like you can't really pull a guy out without compromising in some way, like what the team really is, like
exactly. And as Kings fans have pointed out to me, basically every trade that Monty McNair has made so far has been buying a guy at his lowest value and giving up nothing of value, really. Like the perfect example of this, and I know the Dante DiVincenzo thing didn't work out, but they gave up Marvin Bagley in a second-round pick. Marvin Bagley was leaving anyway. He was never going to work out in Sacramento. He has not worked out in Detroit. Like, that was just like, hey, you're expiring guy for our expiring guy. Let's see if we can get Dante DiVincenzo in here and make things work. That's the kind of trade that they're looking for. They're looking for, we'll give you some second-round picks and some salary filler, and the Sixers just aren't going to be interested in that kind of trade. Now, the Warriors, I've heard people bring up Moses Moody as the guy that they would want to bring back. And I'm just telling you right now, and this is someone who has said, big Moses Moody fan pre-draft, loved the idea of what he could be in the NBA. Yeah. He's not good right now. Matisse Thybulle is a more impactful player than Moses Moody. The Sixers don't develop guys. They're in win now mode. They're not taking back Moses Moody. And the Warriors aren't going to trade Moses Moody for Thybulle. So I didn't even really waste my time thinking, like, I looked at the Warriors and kind of ran into the same thing where it's like they love their young guys so much. I can't see them moving on from any of them for Thybulle. And like, they're not going to trade Dante DiVincenzo because he's important in their rotation. Like, I just didn't really see a trade that worked unless you're involving multiple teams here. And I think ultimately, when you look at what the Sixers have been able to do now, keep in mind, some of this is small sample size. Some of this is opponent three-point shooting being really bad when these two players play together. But when Joel Embiid, who, obviously Joel always has a really high plus-minus and net rating. But when Joel Embiid and Matisse Thybulle share the court, which has been the biggest problem for the Sixers when we get to the playoffs, they are a plus 25 in 228 minutes this year. Whoa. Which is a crazy high net rating. And you can say, well, of course it's because it's Embiid. No, that's like the highest combination of any two players on the team. Like, they have been incredible together. And I don't think that's sustainable for big minutes in the playoffs, but can it survive for 15, 20 minutes, especially when you want to take PJ Tucker and Tobias Harris and give them a little bit of rest so that you have a competent enough wing in your rotation, especially because I think that Thybulle can play with Harden. He can play with Embiid. I think that right now, and one of the things that I should point out is that opponents are shooting 27% from three in those minutes. That will go up 6 to 7% and come back to about league average, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And it will balance out and it won't be quite as crazy. But going into last night, it was like plus 20. And then I watched them dominate. And it was the Magic, but like the Magic have played them tough. And they've been, as you've pointed out, much better than people expected this year. And I was saying during the live stream last night, I was like, this is going to help the net rating even more because they went on a run right when Thybulle was put in. So I actually can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually think that Thybulle should be playing, at least in the regular season, should be playing 15 to 20 minutes per game. And then if you get to the playoffs and he's not playable for a matchup, then try to trade for a wing who could be playable. Like, try to get Javonte Green from the Bulls, who might be selling at this deadline. Try to get Torrey Craig from the Suns, who might be making a deal to get OG Anunoby. Like, try to get guys who you're not going to have to give up Thybulle for, or McDaniels from the Hornets. Like, try to get guys that will just give you a different look so that, like, you don't have to rely on Daniel House as much, and you can put in at least a competent rotation level wing. And then you have Thybulle for certain matchups, and you have these guys for other matchups, and you basically can get those guys without giving up a ton. So I'm more on the keep Thybulle, try to get another wing for when Thybulle isn't playable, as opposed to trade Thybulle, and once again, unless you're getting like a fringe starter level wing back to me. So that's kind of how I feel on the whole situation. I just think his value is way too low. And as Kyle Neubeck replied to my tweet and said, like, he's like, Thybulle's not going to have a huge market this summer. Like, you're probably going to be able to keep him for the MLE for 3 years. And like, worst case scenario, a year from now at the deadline, again, you have matching salary then, because teams are always going to believe in guys that have shown things this early in their career. And I know that he's about to be 26, but like, he'll be a rotation at worst case scenario bench wing that can play on a team like the Kings or the Wizards or one of those teams. And I think he will have value in a trade moving forward. So that's kind of how I feel about the whole thing. I would be surprised if he gets traded in the next week. If anything, I think it would be a sign and trade this summer, or or they bring him back and then they trade him at a later date. So that's kind of how I feel about Thybulle right now, which is wild to say because I was very much team trade Thybulle under any circumstance last summer, but I think that he's proven to be too important for a team that just has no fucking wings at all, and in a league that has no wings that are available in the trade market right now. So that's kind of how I feel. So speaking of wings, let's move on to the greatest wing of all time, OG Anunoby.
Let's go, untouchable. Like it's mostly, you know, when you're hearing about these OG Anunoby trade rumors, it's mostly like, you know, it's you know, it's more rhetorical, you know, it's more just you're hearing about this, it's
not real.
It's not real. They're not really gonna I mean, we talk about this is kind of the same thing like we were talking about with Kevin Durant. Like if OG Anunoby was really available, you would trade for OG Anunoby.
Of course.
You just do it. You gotta get him. You gotta get him.
You make Desmond Bane in every pick available if OG Anunoby is available.
Oh my God. If OG Anunoby is actually available,
Brandon Ingram, he's got to be on the table.
Like, you've got to put these guys on the, like, you can't just be like getting cute and like pussyfooting around, you know, like if Masai Ujiri is making the mistake, and this is, by the way, this is like, if they actually do this is a franchise ruining mistake. Okay. Because let me just tell you this. Do you think that it's every season you get to go 23 and 30 to start? Because I didn't tell you, OG Anunoby is a huge part of that. And you're just going to fucking like you're going to pull that apart for what? Just because there's a little outside pressure on everyone. It's you know, this is really going to shine badly on Masai's legacy if he actually
100%.
goes through with this and actually trades OG Anunoby. It's just,
agreed.
I might vomit on I hope it doesn't happen during our stream because like I'm just gonna throw up.
Same here.
Probably blood because that's how stressed out I would
be. Yeah, I mean, look, there's a reason why this guy can get you back a Donovan Mitchell package, like because he's better than Donovan Mitchell, clearly. It was funny. So one of the things with this whole OG thing, the reason that we bring him up is because OG is one of the few recognizable names and good players that are going to be available at this deadline. And the new news that has been floating out there from reporters that I'm sure aren't getting inside information from the Toronto Raptors at all.
No, not at all.
No, is that basically there's somewhat of a bidding war for OG Anunoby. So because he is one of the only impact players available at this deadline, he kind of wants a new situation anyway. The Suns, the Knicks, the Pelicans, and the Grizzlies are the 4 teams that have been brought up by Toronto reporters, by Shams, by Chris Haynes, by Mark Stein, those kind of guys. So people that I would say overall, you can trust the information they're getting, but I would say you need to consider what the source is, because I think that Masai is very clearly leaking to certain journalists, or at least someone in the front office is in Toronto. So like Zach Lowe on his podcast today.
God King. By the way, he doesn't. I know he goes up to Toronto every year, and like he always talks about hanging out with people from teams. It's not the Toronto guy. Like he would never plant information on behalf of the Toronto Raptors.
Of course not.
Make that clear. He's the guy who said before the season that 48 wins was way too low, and to hammer the over, that was not because he's a Toronto plant in any way, shape, or form. So you know he's going to shoot straight when it comes to the Toronto Raptors, I think is my point here, right?
He talks about the Raptors so positively so often that he somehow planted a seed in Bill Simmons' mind, his friend and former boss, by the way.
Yeah.
His friend.
You should bring that up more often.
Yeah, I think so too. His friend.
Whenever I'm talking about my friend, I always make sure I say that their job relationship to me. That's how I know.
Oh yeah, my former. You mean Bill Simmons, my former boss, the one who was unjustly fired from the company that I still work for.
I love, you know, when I see my boss out and people ask me like, "Who is that?" and I was like, "That's my friend." And then I get pulled into HR because of some misunderstandings about quid pro quo and what this friendship actually meant. She was a nice lady though, so it's a shame she got fired. Anyway,
anywho, on to the next. But he somehow convinced Bill Simmons. I'm convinced that Bill didn't come up with this on his own. I think he just listened to too many of Zach's podcasts talking about how Scotty Barnes was untouchable for Kevin Durant. And then convinced himself that the Toronto Raptors would be the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. That was on their bold takes one, if you remember.
That was one of the most insane.
Which has aged really well, to be honest. I mean, let's look at the standings. Let's see how far back they are from the 1 seed. It can't be that far, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Let's pull it up. All right, so the Celtics are in first. Mm-hmm. The Raptors are only 14 and a half back. So it's how many? Close. There's 30 games left? I mean,
you know a run's coming. Like Zach always says about the Warriors, you know the run is coming. So it'll be any day now. You know, we'll see it.
Yeah, we'll definitely see it sometime soon. If they keep OG Anunoby and they don't trade him.
Right, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
If they don't make the franchise ruining mistake. I mean, if you trade OG Anunoby, you should basically contract at that point, right? Like exactly. Like just move the franchise to Las Vegas, like, and then call it good.
Yeah, no. See, you just become the Sonics 2.0.
Yeah, you just the Toronto Sonics.
Seattle. We're moving them to Seattle.
So, do you combine them at that point? Like, okay, they get their title
history
from OKC, and then get the Toronto title too.
Yes, it will be like the Cleveland
doing the Lakers accounting. Yeah, the Lakers accounting for championships.
So, God, I can't believe I let you slip that in. Celtics propaganda on this fucking podcast. Unbelievable.
The leprechaun of the media.
The little green hand, as they say.
The little green hand behind all the media.
Okay, so the latest news is basically, and as Zach got queasy saying it, he got sick to his stomach saying that he was really talking about it like it was Steph leaving the Warriors. Like LeBron leaving the Cavs the first time. Like, could you imagine if they were to? But it does sound like I'm just now thinking about like, remember all those moments of OG Anunoby, you know. He had that 3 steal game the one time, had the huge shot in the bubble on the Kyle Lowry pass against the Celtics. Trying to think of any other historical memories of OG Anunoby. I mean, he didn't even play in the finals run.
His genuine one is that he told Serge Ibaka he turned him on to scarves.
Yeah,
actually probably
the greatest moment in OG Anunoby's. That's his greatest addition to the NBA universe.
And no sarcasm. That's a great NBA addition.
Extremely good bit. Yeah. But so it does sound like OG is going to get traded in the next week or so. Pretty much every major reporter has said their gut. They're like, oh, no hard reporting on this. We know what's happening. Like, he will be traded sometime in the next week. And I guess my question for you is, what would be your favorite destination for OG? Because OG's probably going to be, in my opinion, I think he's probably going to end up being the best player that's moved. Because I think that too many teams are just scared to make a big move right now. I know we've gotten like a all-star, quote unquote, traded the last two deadlines, if you include Vucevic from 2 years ago as an all-star. And then we had a bunch of all-stars last year. I would be surprised if we get an all-star level player now. But what team do you think that OG could be traded to in the next week? I mean, like, what's the most realistic and what would be your favorite spot for him to land?
I mean, I think the most realistic one, I don't know. It's kind of hard to predict. I'm spoiling a little bit ahead of the pod, but like, I do actually kind of believe there is a bidding war for him because, like, again, we just got done talking about, like, he can very genuinely play the three. Like, he's a 4 on offense, but he like can be a 3 on defense, which is what's important. And that is something that everyone needs. Like, every contender needs. Like, the only like teams that like don't need that are like the Celtics and like maybe the Pelicans if you squint. Like, so and they still might trade for OG Anunoby, so I don't know that, it's going to depend on who's willing to put what on the table, and kind of parsing that out is a little bit tough. I think that not my favorite destination, because I would think this would mean they would probably go to the finals. But I think if the Denver Nuggets could get OG, that would be quite scary.
I just don't think they have what it takes. Like they would have to trade. They'd probably have to trade their guard rotation, basically. Not Murray, but they'd have to trade like Bones, KCP, and then whatever first they could.
We'll see. Well, I wonder if Sam has something about that later on in the episode.
Oh, possibly. Maybe if you pay for the Patreon, you'll be able to find out.
If you pay for the Patreon, you might be able to yell at me later on. So that I think that one's pretty good. If the Heat get him, I will just be furious. I'll be so mad because
I don't think the Heat are going to be in it, but
it would mean they got him for like one pick for some reason, as like a wink for the Kyle Lowry deal from like before. So yeah, I mean, I think the Nuggets. I mean, the team that really should trade for him is the Grizzlies, but they won't because the small bean drafting team, you can't
break that up, that core.
Well, once you make a buy trade, you're on the clock. Because you need, if you're Zach Kleiman, you need an excuse for when you lose in round 2 this year. And it's like, we haven't made our all-in move yet.
Exactly.
And if you've traded for OG Anunoby when you lose in round 2, you'll be like, you look bad. That's one less year you have of, DM sliding and stealing the work of like draft Twitter and getting drunk and being like, please fly out. Please tell me all about which person in this draft you like the best. So I don't think the Grizzlies will, but they probably should. They would probably be the team that would have the most upside and the most to gain from getting OG Anunoby.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the bidding war thing is real, but I also think that I think the Knicks are the team that offered 3 firsts that we heard about, the mystery team. The reason I say that is because I think the Knicks are just offering their protected picks that no one wants, because they're not going to end up being good picks. They have first from like the Nuggets, and then they have that Wizards protected first that might not convert. Like the picks that they can offer are not going to be super valuable. I don't think they're sending unprotected picks unless it's their pick this year, or maybe the Mavs pick this year or something that they own. So I'm not, and that's also top 10 protected, by the way, which could, the way the Mavs are going right now, it's possible they end up in the top 10. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's possible. So I do think that there is a team that is willing to give up like 3 first-round picks, but the new reports coming out from the Toronto side is that they actually want to get players back. So they want to get like young players that can play with Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam. So if that is the case, I think they're going to be looking for more shooting. I think they're going to be looking for the same kind of players that they always like there, which are big wings. And I think there are two teams that can really offer that. And I think that is, look, the Grizzlies, I've talked about it before, but I don't really think this has gone kind of noticed. So far, based on the results of this draft, last draft, and honestly, going back to 2021, the Grizzlies really haven't drafted that like the 2021-2022 class has not been that great for the Grizzlies. Like they didn't hit on a Desmond Bane like they did in 2022 or 2020, I should say. Like Zaire Williams has not panned out at all so far. So I don't think he has the value unless you're including 2 or 3 extra firsts to get back an OG Anunoby. Are you including Dylan Brooks? Maybe that changes the conversation, and he is Canadian, which we know Toronto loves Canadians. But I actually don't think the Grizzlies are the team that are involved here at all. I think the two teams that really should be considering making a move and also have that kind of fit that the Raptors would want back are the Pelicans, who we've discussed ad nauseum with this stuff, because they have Trey Murphy, who I think that they would be very interested in, and they have Dyson Daniels, who can't shoot, but is a ball handling rookie. Rookie contract aligns with Toronto's defensive first mentality that they have had. I think he has a lot of potential. He's 19 still. Like that's the kind of guy, like Dyson Daniels, who I have a fake trade for them later, is the kind of guy that they should be targeting. And then the other guy, Phoenix has an expiring Cam Johnson, who has been mentioned in conversations. That's another tall guy who can shoot. You know, the defense isn't great, but Toronto just needs shooting to go around those guys. So I think that that's the kind of move where it's like Cam Johnson plus stuff and then salary filler to make it work. Those are the kind of teams that I think, I don't know if they get in a bidding war, because I think the Pelicans, with all their injuries and with the fact that like they're still so young, they still have so many picks, they might be patient. Phoenix is the one where I think if I had to make a guess today, I think OG Anunoby a week from now is on the Phoenix Suns. Just deducting everything, the situation that they're in, that wing rotation would be incredible with Bridges and OG as the starting wings. Like it doesn't get much better than that. They're literally the two best kind of 3-and-D, different style. OG tends to guard up a little bit. Bridges is better offensively. I think OG's a little bit better defensively, a little bit more versatile defensively, but they're kind of in the same tier. You basically put the perfect 3-and-D guys around Devin Booker in that team, and I think that could really work for them. I think if I had to guess, I'm saying OG is on the Suns at a week, and I don't think it's going to be like a crazy haul, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Johnson is the main return and you get like Phoenix's pick now and some salary filler and maybe a protected Phoenix pick in a few years, because I don't think they want to pay Cam Johnson, and OG gives them another year. He's an upgrade as a two-way player over Cam Johnson at least. And then I think that they kind of they go from there.
Well, that's interesting. I did not think you were going to go Cam Johnson's was going to be the name you said.
He was the one that was brought up in the articles. Like I know they've had interest in Ayton in the past, but I just struggle to see a way where the Suns, like, are the Suns giving up picks in that trade? Because right now I know people have said like look, DeAndre Ayton's still a good basketball player. We know he's not as poor as playing as poorly as he played this year. That's not who he is as a player. He's shown that he can be a valuable player even in the playoffs. On that finals run, he was a very valuable player to them. But like, does he have a ton of value on that max contract, on the first year of a max contract, where he doesn't look like a max player at all? And honestly, is in a better, when Devin Booker plays at least, is in a better situation than he probably would be in Toronto. He doesn't bring shooting, which Toronto, like at a certain point, you need to put shooters around these guys. Like you can't just put a bunch of non-shooters again, even like, you know, OG's more of a corner 3-point shooter, but like Ayton's not a shooter. And then you're putting him with Siakam and Scotty, who are not shooters. Like I actually don't really see the Ayton fit there unless they make some sort of Pascal trade as well, which I don't see them making in the next week.
Agreed. I mean, but I wonder, I guess what I just wonder is, it seems like the Ayton thing is irreparable. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I wonder if the new ownership guy coming in wanting to make a splash and they're like, hey, this guy like fucking hates our coach. And like, we're trying to like build something here. Like, we're not really sure he's good. Like, and we just paid him like $30 million. Like, do we want to, maybe try and do a Ben Simmons thing where maybe we get off him before everyone figures out maybe he's a little stinky? And then, I think the fit in Toronto isn't the worst thing in the world for Ayton, because that's kind of what he was coming into. He like remade himself on the fly, like with the help of like, and he probably doesn't get enough credit for that, like with the help of Chris Paul and Devin Booker, but like he was like a, like a high post, shoot from everywhere, like long twos guy. He was like supposed to be like a center offensive engine. And the Raptors have gross offense, to say the least. So,
yeah. I don't really think he is that at the NBA level is my thing. Like, I just don't like now defensively that team could be really good. But they already like Toronto. I know this year their defense has struggled and they need a rim protector and he would be by far the best. But like, I don't know. I don't really see it for Toronto. I think that there would have to be different alterations to that. And I think that if I were Toronto, I would want back picks to take that contract back. And I think it might be a smart buy low if like you're like, look, we want a player who's a good player. And I just think it's a lot to do that trade mid-season. It's the same thing as the Zach LaVine thing. Like you're trading for a max contract in the middle of the season without being able to kind of like, we want to commit to this guy long-term, whatever. I think that's kind of more of an off-season deal. But before we get into anything else, this is the end of the free portion. If you want to hear the whole episode, we're going to dive into a bunch of fake trades that we have both come up with. Sam came up with a bunch of fake trades for the Western Conference. I came up with a bunch of fake trades for the Eastern Conference. And then we're going to basically do this new segment called Slop Doctors, where we dig through and determine whether the trades are good for both sides or bad for both sides. So